box. So we are now being recorded, and I wanted you to be aware of that. And so I'm going to start the presentation here. My name is Alan Rasmussen, and I'm the prevention manager for Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services. Been working for that agency since 2003 with a focus on suicide and substance abuse prevention. This community training event is a partnership between Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services and the Mental Health Association of Fauquier County. I mean, I don't mind saying we've had a long relationship, RRCS and the Mental Health Association, and it's been a good one. And so last year, I was talking with Renee, and we decided to do a community mental health training series. And we thought that series went very well. It was for the community to give information, to help people. And so, you know, Renee wanted to continue this relationship. So we decided we're going to do this again. So we're offering another series this year, and we'll be having trainings each month like you're being involved in today. And we're excited about that relationship. Now, you know, I don't mind. I'm saying this too. We are extremely happy for the attendees that show up, because you're a vital piece of what we're doing. We're not doing this to just get in and hear ourselves talk or practice. We want to reach people. And so that's why it's recorded, and we love it when people show up. So you guys are, you're the main reason we're doing the trainings. And so this is, like I said, I'll be facilitating this event, and we are fortunate to have an incredible panel of presenters. And so what I want them to do as we're going into this, I want them to introduce themselves. I could introduce them, but I want you to hear their voice, see them, hear them, and then ultimately I'm going to do a short PowerPoint presentation with some facts and figures. I'll show you that in a minute, and then we'll have a panel discussion and that kind of thing, and hear about their work they're doing. So, Cory, how about you?
All right, I'll jump in first. I knew you were going to throw me under the bus right up front.
Sure.
My name's Cory Will. I'm the Recovery Services Program Manager with Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services. I have been with the agency now on and off since 2015. I took a brief break to go back to school and get another piece of paper, and Ryan Banks, our division director, just kind of kept tabs on me and brought me back. So now I've been running the peer recovery program. So we have a small army of peer recovery specialists and family support partners that connect with the community and members trying to find recovery in a different sort of way, because they have lived experience with it. We also have the S.E.E. Recovery Center, and the S.E.E. stands for Support, Encourage, Empower, which is also like the philosophy of peer work. We're not going to help you. We're not going to fix you. We know that everybody's perfectly capable of doing that. So we're there to support, encourage, and empower whatever that individual needs to find their way to health and well-being and recovery. And I do believe Reverend Vincent is now back on, so I can close my mouth and pass it along.
Yeah, and we'll be hearing more from you as well, Cory. We know you're going to do a presentation as part of this. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to do a 10-minute presentation. So, Reverend Holland.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Vini Holland. I'm an ordained licensed minister. I'm pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church in Woodville, Virginia, and I'm an associate pastor at First Baptist Church in Warrenton, Virginia. I really just involved in a lot of community upbringing and building. I'm blessed to be a part of the Mental Health Association, blessed to be part of Caliper and the Citizens Action Team for the 21st Century Policing, as well as a few other endeavors. So this is exciting.
Well, we're excited to have you, Reverend Holland, and you are an incredible individual and a key community partner involved in anything going on in the community. So, you know, I think there may have been a problem with Darren Stevens showing today. I don't see him in the participant list. So what I'm going to do, maybe he'll show up, but I'm going to go on and move on to the next slide here. and do a short presentation. Here's here's the layout for today. We're going to lay out some facts and figures, and then we're going to have Cory Will talk about recovery and resilience, PTSD recovery and resilience. We'll have Reverend Holland talk about the role of spirituality, and then we'll have, if Chief Stevens doesn't show, we'll move right on to resources and programs for seeking help. And then we're going to have a discussion. We're going to go over the questions that were submitted and try to answer some of the questions from those in attendance. So with that said, here's some foundational information. We're just doing this to lay out a little bit of foundation for what we're doing here today as we talk about men's mental health. And I love that statement, men's mental health matters. So 9% of men in the United States have daily feelings of depression or anxiety. 1 in 3 of those men took medication because of those feelings. 1 in 4 spoke to a mental health professional. Now, I like information like that, and that's going to feed into some things I want to mention before I turn it over to Cory, but as we evolve here. But 30.6% of men have suffered from a period of depression in their lifetime. That includes symptoms such as rage and risk-taking. And you can see where those studies came from. And that's interesting information. So about 6 out of every 10 men experience at least one trauma in their lives. They have experienced at least one trauma in their lives. And men are more likely to experience trauma related to accidents, physical assault, combat, disaster, or as a witness to death or injury. And we'll talk about the impact of trauma on individuals big time. So PTSD can develop weeks, months, or years after experiencing a traumatic event. So men are almost 2 times more likely to binge drink than women and have consistently higher rates of alcohol-related deaths and hospitalizations. 49% of men feel more depressed than they admit to the people in their life. Overall, men are less likely to voice struggles with mental illness and thoughts of suicide, and instead suffer in silence. Some contributing factors can be relationship breakdown, job loss, lack of close social and family relationships, and middle-age dip in well-being. Now, some barriers to seeking help. Personality traits, toxic masculinity, employment stigma, lack of mental health professionals like them. So, how to help men seek help. Now, when we get on this, I want to go over this slide about how to help men seek help, but I also want to take some time to actually talk about when to seek help. And I'm going to do that actually first, because, based on that information we just heard, we know that there are men in the community who are suffering in silence. They may have mental health disorders. Today, we're not here to teach people to diagnose anything, but I do think it's important to understand some basic information about mental health disorders and substance use disorders. And this is really from some of that mental health first aid training, in which we train community members who are gatekeepers ultimately to be able to spot people in distress, talk to them, link them to help, and be part of helping our community members, not doing the treatment piece, but helping them get to the right services. But, the definition of that mental health disorder is critical in the work that we do. And so it's, mental health disorder is when it's a diagnosable illness that impacts a person's moods, emotions, behaviors, and it can disrupt their ability to work, carry out daily activities, and engage in satisfying relationships. So, again, if you keep that in mind, and the key here, that's to help guide us in, when you hear the word diagnosable disorder, mental illness, that's when we're talking about someone needs to really see a professional. So if we see those behaviors going on with somebody, it should pique our interest to encourage and support getting people help. And same information with substance use disorders. When people, it affects their lives negatively, their behaviors, their moods, and that kind of thing.
For tomorrow or Friday.
Let me mute that. Sorry. And that was someone else. But anyway, same thing with substance use disorders. When people develop tolerance, they're using more often because of that tolerance. It affects their lives, their moods, their behaviors, and interferes with their work and their relationships. Same kind of outlook there, identifiers. We need to be alert to maybe thinking, hey, maybe I need to talk to this person about getting some help in what I see as a gatekeeper. So then we look at how to help men seek help. When is one thing, how. So help them to get help. Reassure them it's okay to ask for help and that support is out there. It's available. Resources are available. You could help them contact their doctor or accompany them to their appointment if they want you to. Now, I've learned this from research and I've seen it in real life. People are more likely to get help if they have someone who cares about them and they're in relationship with them and they're supporting this and encouraging it. That's why I love training gatekeepers, talking to families and people in the community. So if you can connect with somebody, they begin to trust you, believe in you, they will most likely get into a program. So a weekly text message or a phone call can make a big difference. And, also find out about local services such as talk therapy or support groups. You can use the Mental Health Association's provider directory or call us. And there's a phone number and a link to that. We also, I'm going to say this now, we also at RRCS have that regional call center number. And, they're going to that 988, but right now at the 434-230-9704 is a number you can call to get help. I'm going to make sure, let me look at one thing. I want to make sure I got that right. I don't know why my mind, I just got in the talk and all of a sudden I'm questioning myself. So bear with me 1 second. That's a critical number we want to promote out here. And you can put that in the chat box if you would. I had it right. 434-230-9704. You can access help. If you're a gatekeeper, someone needs help, you're not sure where to go, they will help listen to what's going on. It's 24/7 operation. They will help link you to an appropriate resource in our region. So it's a great number. Love having that as a go-to number. So with that said, I'm gonna actually save that slide for later and stop share. And I want to turn this over to Cory to do a presentation and talk, and Reverend Holland to do their presentations. And then we're going to review these questions that were received over the website and see what we can do to answer those. Okay, Cory, you're up.
Thanks, Alan. So I think that the best place for me to start is to talk a little bit about my life experience, because when I started all this out, I started out as a peer recovery specialist. I did 17 years in the Marine Corps infantry, had some experiences over in combat that didn't quite set right. and I really struggled. So you talk about like that toxic masculinity environment. I was in an environment where there were some intangible and tangible consequences for seeking help. And because of that, I just tried to bury everything. And eventually it comes up, and it comes out in a little bit of different ways. And I like the fact that that's the statistics that Alan brought out mention rage. Because it really does come out in anger. I have a home gym set up in my basement, and I refer to it as my rage control equipment. And it really is like, that's where I can I can get out like that physical energy that's backed by rage or anger or anything else that's going on. And that's just like my personal preference. But with trying to find help and recovery from post-traumatic stress disorder, what really hit. So one side of it is it was complicated for me just because I also have a traumatic brain injury, and those two things overlap with your symptom set. And it really took us a while to figure out what was what. In fact, I had been living with that traumatic brain injury for 6 years before they figured out I had one. At the time that I was really heavily involved in combat, they hadn't quite put together that if you get blown up and you don't have any of the other physical symptoms, i.e. shrapnel or amputation, anything like that, they didn't realize like the impact that the blast would have on the rest of your body, including your brain. So it took them a while. And then when they finally caught up and they figured that out, that's when they really started to piece things apart. For me, that was too late to save my career. At that point, it was my symptom sets, because I tried to bury everything for so long. My symptoms have gotten so bad that my life was out of control and unmanageable. And I had to do a lot of work just to try and find a recovery pathway. And part of that was seeking help. And also, so there's two sides to seeking help. And in the Marine Corps, I was forced. It was like, you're going to go to therapy. And I felt so bad for that first therapist because I was mandated to go to 6 sessions and I didn't open my mouth once the entire time. I sat there and it's like, I have spent almost my entire Marine Corps career at some point staring at nothing, waiting for something to happen all by myself. So 45 minutes sitting across from a therapist and not saying a word was nothing. If I could go back and find them, I would apologize for that because they tried. But it's so like there's the difference there is it's not just the opportunity to seek help. It's also encourage participation, because like where the magic happened in my recovery was when I was to the point where, hey, I need to do something. I need to participate in this. If I'm going to make me better, I have to do the work. I don't tolerate psychotropic medications well. So medications, like there was no magic pill. I really had to put in the work. For anybody who's been around me, I do have a service dog. Service dog right now, I'm on my second. His name is Peyton. And in a lot of ways, he's a lifesaver because he will cue in to my anxiety starting to rise or some symptoms starting to set in long before I pick up on it. Because I am still entrenched in this, like, oh, it's okay, everything's fine, I can handle it. It's like you can't just, and this isn't just, so the Marine Corps infantry is kind of like a spotlight on what toxic masculinity can look like in depressing help seeking. But at the same time, if you look at our society as a whole, we have a whole lot of that, where men are just expected to man up, to suck it up and keep going. Okay, well, how are you going to handle this? Like, hey, you got into this mess, figure yourself out, you know? And these are things that we consistently hear. So when you have somebody that's more supportive and is offering to like be there. So that's one of the things I always tell the peers, you know, you're not there to fix or help, you're there to be there. And sometimes just having somebody there to go to start that journey with you is the biggest thing that can go. And then I know we also wanted to bring up some of the wellness points. When you think about self-care, always think about like those different things that help you recharge. So I am an introvert by nature, and I am in a position where I am forced to extrovert all the time, and it doesn't go over too well. I get to a point and it's just like, whoo, I am done. I need to tap out. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is getting out into nature and going out and hiking. Our proximity to the Appalachian Trail is probably one of the best things about this area, because I love going out to AT and just getting into those areas where I no longer hear cars, I don't hear planes, I don't run across people, and I can just disconnect. And it's that kind of recharge. And it's not just, okay, I'm having a hard time, now I'm going to go out hiking. It's I'm going to plan it out, where I want to do this every few months. I want to set aside a day where I just go out and disconnect. And then it's building the things into your routine. So before we started all of this, Alan was talking about, getting his devotion and reading his devotions in the morning and finding his inner peace. Like for us in the recovery community, that's our recovery routine. So for me, it was this morning I got up, and I've been in my head a lot lately. We've been really busy. So it was like, I need to make a point to get up and go run. Right? It's hot, it's humid, I sweat like crazy, but I was able to just for 30 minutes, like let everything else go. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all the physical activity. It can be the video games. I took a day off in the middle of the week, and the only thing I accomplished was kicking butt in Wii Sports, right? That was it. But that was all I wanted to do, right? It's those little things where you build it into your routine, and that helps you stay well. And when we struggle, or even when we're not struggling, right? Think about when you get busy. So let's say one of the things that you love to do every morning is have a cup of coffee by yourself outside and just look out over your backyard, your front yard, whatever the case is. When we start getting busy, those are the first things we drop. Just those little things. It's those first things that we drop. And that's so I also use a wellness recovery action plan. That's also one of those things that I look for. It's like, all right, what am I doing when I start seeing some of those things that let me know I'm struggling? When I start seeing some of those signs, it's like, okay, what am I not doing that I was doing before? Because that's usually it, right? I can usually pinpoint, I used to do this every day and I stopped because I got busy. Alan wanted me to jump into this. Ryan wanted me to jump into this. And all of a sudden, the things I'm cutting out are the things that I need to do to stay well. I know a lot of people in this area, they love to go fishing. Right. And one of my staff, the first time I saw his truck without his fishing pole, I was like, you okay? Because I've seen you out fishing when it's 30 degrees and sleeting. So, because that's like his thing. And it was one of those clues like, hey, what are you continuing to do? It doesn't have to be anything physical activity wise. I think some of the guys I know that like to fish, their favorite part about fishing is that it doesn't involve doing much. Right? You sit in a boat in pretty scenery, drop a line in the water, and you may or may not stay awake. Some people, it's those things that you enjoy doing that you have to continue to do and build in, and that's how you stay well. And then those are the things that you can identify where you can say, hey, I'm not doing these things again. Maybe I need to do more. Or, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Do you have any suggestions? One of the things that we always like to do is that when we're having problems, and this is the peer staff, it's one of the ways that we try and get people engaged, is saying, like, if I have an issue and I'm working with Alan, or I see that Alan's struggling with something, I recognize it, and Alan's like, oh, well, I'm not going to ask for help for this. I think I can handle it. If I'm working with him, I may say, Alan, I'm really struggling with this, right? I'm really having a hard time managing my schedule and making sure I get my time off. And it's really starting to cause some issues at home because I'm getting angry. I'm always tired. If you were in my situation, what would you do? Right? And it's kind of flipping the script. It's a way to get people engaged where I'm not asking for help, right? But I'm learning to help myself. And I think on that point is so we can keep everything flowing. I will hand everything off to Reverend Holland and say, high five, sir, you got it.
Thank you, Cory, appreciate it. I'm gonna start this by saying one of the things that I realize is getting older was a blessing for me because it allowed me to stop and look back how I got to this point. And we talking about the spiritual aspect. I don't always say it in the religious aspect, but in the spiritual aspect, it's part of the universe. And I go back and I look at the trauma and the traumatic things that happened in my life that I think are trauma, and then measure that today. I walked through my life in this country. I was blessed to be a military dependent, so we lived around the world. But coming back to the United States was an adjustment change because the cultures were different. Coming back to the time we came back in the 70s, there was, of course, conflict. So being accepted for how you look wasn't necessarily an easy thing to adjust to. On the military basis, everybody got along because we were in Russia, in Germany when Russia invaded Czechoslovakia. So we all went to the bomb shelter. We all went to the commissary. So there were no differences like I encountered coming back to the United States, where people would look at your skin and make a difference. So that was the first kind of trauma, but I had a grounding that I didn't recognize I had. My folks, they believed in prayer and they believed in God. It was always there, but I didn't really understand it at that time. We'd go to church and Sunday school. And then growing up, being athletic, I got into college and all that was taken away. I ended up getting knocked out and there was a brain bruise. And so NCAA says no more sports. So I lost all of that I thought I had with athletic ability. But fortunately, I was also there on academic scholarship. So I had that part. And then going along, I got to the point where they thought that maybe I had cancer. So at that time, so I dropped out of school and bought a tractor trailer. And I went on the road for 5 years to self-examine. It was a release. I was able to see family around the country. I was able to see this entire country. I drove all 48 states. And just being able to immerse yourself in nature and stop along the side of the road and look at the beauty of some of these places was an escape from some of the pain of trying to live in society. And it put me back in touch with the higher being of creation. Again, another spiritual anchor that I didn't really recognize that I had until now looking back. And then I drove a truck for a while. And after I got driving a truck, I went into the travel center industry, truck stops. And so that again was a high intensity job. It's 24-hour a day and you're pouring yourself in, and you're doing all these things. And I didn't realize how much I was putting into it, trying to achieve success. But I had my wife and kids, and that was an anchor. Now, I didn't say I was a good husband, didn't say I was a good father, but I was blessed to have children, and to see them growing up and know that I created something that wasn't as messed up as I was on the inside was a joy that I would be blessed to be able to do that, and to have a wife that kept them grounded and kept me grounded, so I didn't get too far out. So that was a blessing. But then I got injured in 2000 and had to go out and have back surgery. And I've had 3 failed back surgeries since then, which is why I walk with a cane, because all the nerves to my legs and lower body are all messed up from the back surgery. So I don't have a knee problem, it's truly a back surgery. So again, I lost that. So here, another, you think you're gonna succeed in athletics, you lose that. You're gonna succeed in the business world, you lose that. And then, going along that travel after that, I lost the ability to walk for a little while. And so what was a connection? There was a spiritual base. My wife, we always have music on, and we listen to preaching, and we go to church periodically. She went more often than I did. but I would listen and I would read and I would pray because my parents had also instilled it in me. So there was always that spiritual anchor that I didn't recognize or appreciate until I got older. And then we moved to Virginia, and I started going to church more often. And I knew I was called to do something. I was just denying it because as a man, you want to do the macho things. You don't want, preaching is not, in my mind, I thought preaching was not macho. So I started realizing that Jesus is actually strong. So preaching, it takes a pretty, I'm learning you have to have some thick skin to preach, because people will tell you what they think about you after your sermon is done. And so it's interesting. But being able to get in that and now sitting back looking and saying, okay, so I had those things along the way. When I was working, I would go out with the fellas and the women, and we'd go out and we'd drink, drinking sometimes too much. You get out to a conference, it's the last night of the conference, everybody goes to the bar, hanging out. We had a great workshop and you drink a little too much. And so I said, okay, well, alcohol wasn't supposed to be in my life. So when I got injured, because of the medication they had on, God took alcohol away. So being able to get depressed during that time, but I didn't have alcohol to turn to because I couldn't intake alcohol with the medications I was on. And then the medications became heavy, the doses that they had me on, the kind of medication. And many of you know the names, gabapentin, Dilaudid, fentanyl, all those medications just began to mess with the mind. And God said, you know what? You can't have this in your body. And so he took that away again. But at the same time, I got an increase in connection to what I feel like the world, the universe, spiritual. And going through that process of releasing the ego, the masculinity of manhood, and saying, you know what, I need something higher than me, admitting it out loud to yourself, and allowing yourself to look back at all the things in your life that were going on and forgive yourself for what you didn't get right, but know that there were things along the way that helped you. Even though you may not have been good at it, like I wasn't a good husband, but I had a wife that cared. I wasn't a good father, but I had kids that were growing and intelligent. So I may not have been the best, but I had success because I'm still part of your life. And to me, we put too much into sports and business. Those things are perishable, but your family, what you do with a family is a connection, a bond that's beyond anything. Your friends, those are the things that you learn matter, because all the crowns you get on earth, they'll perish. You get a great promotion, a job, you make the money, you do all that. But after a while, when you're making money, you got to make more money to keep the lifestyle you got. Now you're stressed out more. But if you just slow down and look and say, well, look at the things that I have that matter. Somebody at home that says, I love you, even when you mess up. Kids that come up to you and give you a hug, even when you mess up. And then you learn, so that's important, is the relationships, because it allows you to get rid of the stress. And it allows you to get rid of the pressure that's on you. As a man, quote unquote, in society, we're expected to be strong. We're not expected to be able to cry. We're not expected to fall down. We're not expected to make mistakes. We're fixing everything. And so we should be able to fix ourselves. But when we can't, we try to self-fix. We self-medicate. Drugs, alcohol, sex. We try to self-medicate. Anything that feeds the ego that says, I'm doing this myself. And all of those things do is to take you away from the connection to the universe. Because if you look in the universe, you are grand, you are wonderful, you are tremendous, because the fact you're existing and you have the ability to touch other people's lives. And that's where true power is and success is, because you can make a friend and that friendship can last a lifetime or change somebody from being on the edge. That matters more than buying another business or putting a car in the driveway. You change the world because you change somebody's life. And if we can get away from that and begin to measure our connection spiritually to the universe and the successes there, you don't fail in the universe. You only fail in society as far as work goes or a career path. But you don't fail in the universe as long as you get up each day, do your best, love somebody, treat somebody right, be kind, all the simple things that anybody can do. And that's the key. These are things that anybody can do. Your basic skill set. A baby can change a day by smiling at grandpa when he comes in the room. He's changed the whole day. So it's from birth to the grave, from cradle to the grave, we can be successful if we measure the right thing. And we don't measure the right thing as men. We think we've got to go out and be the best, biggest, strongest man. I'm in the gym, and all that didn't matter. All the weightlifting didn't stop me from having 3 failed back surgeries. It's just crazy to realize that all that you think you're going to do, all the athleticism didn't stop, those things from losing the job, working 24 hours a day, tuning in, as they say, quote unquote, didn't stop me from getting injured and losing the career. And what you find out about is there's no indispensable man. When I got injured, it wasn't long before they had somebody else sitting in my seat. So they just roll your chair over to the corner, put somebody else in there. But in the universe, when you make a friend, when you care, when you're spiritually connected, that lasts forever. That lasts forever. It never leaves. And so go along. And then I always tell people, the spiritual things that men have to be, we have to admit that we need to do something. And one of those things I say is mentoring. We need to mentor somebody, to work with somebody, because that's that connection, the spiritual connection. But we also need somebody to mentor us. I always tell people, don't be the smartest one in the room. Always have somebody who's not as smart as you and somebody who's smarter than you. And don't be the oldest one in the room. Always have somebody who's younger than you and somebody who's older than you, because you want the full experience of life. You've not achieved it all. If you're still living, you've not achieved everything in life. So go with some younger people to remind you of how you got here, and older people to remind you of where you're going, and work together through that. And I believe, in prayer. I believe in prayer. And I know some people don't, but if you don't believe in prayer, I say meditate. When I was going on the road, I would pray, but there's times I would just turn everything off and just meditate to the sound of the engine and the wheels on the highway. And you would be amazed at how much stress of the day would fall off. How do you drive 700,000 miles in traffic? Because I'm at peace. I was at peace in that capsule of my truck because of just meditating, and then always remembering to refresh and recover yourself. We burn the candle at both ends. We think that's a super thing. Oh, I'm just as busy. Look how great I am. I'm burning the candle at both ends. But we don't realize you burn the candle at both ends. There's nothing left when it's done. And we didn't figure that part out. Nobody ever tells us the ending, but everybody's great in the middle. Look at what the ending is, and being able to recharge. And sometimes recharging, as Brother Cory said, is just going fishing. I go fishing because my son loves to fish, but I hate putting bait on the hook because I don't want to catch anything. I just want to sit there at the water. But it's a refreshment to be around people who are laughing, having fun, and just sit there on the crop. And just simple things that can help you to recharge yourself realistically. And we have to be honest about those things. Many of us do things that we think society says as men we should do. But you might like to knit. It's okay. We have a both masculine and a feminine side. It's okay to knit. It's okay to crochet. It's okay to bake, and be okay with that and come to the realization that my universe matters more than your opinion of me. If I'm at peace and I'm happy and I'm not out at bars, getting into fights and trying to start fights, which one would you prefer me to see? Me baking muffins or me in the bar on a bar fight in the news on Friday night? And accept that and go forward in that. And I've been in that situation where you go out hoping that you get in a fight, and that's crazy. When I look back at it now, you go into the bar taking your watch off because I'm hoping somebody will say something. And I think about the destructive behaviors that I incurred trying to be a man. I've been shot, I've been stabbed. And it's not fun doing those things, but it makes you look tough in society. But when you look back in your life, say, that was dumb. There were people that I learned were going to love me that I could have missed out on by trying to be toxic masculinity, trying to be a man about these things, and then making sure my wife is a good sounding board. And sometimes I don't want to hear what she has to say. And that's the truth. Like when you have a partner, a friend, you don't always want to hear what they have to say, but they're a good sounding board. Learn to take what they have to say and listen to it, and be okay with that and their opinion. The one thing that really is important is, in my mind, find somebody you can be completely honest with. And sometimes it's not your spouse, because they'll want to try to help you or fix you or remind you of it. You have to have somebody, and sometimes it's a therapist, where you can go and say everything, and that's where it stops. You won't hear it back at you. You won't have to remember it. It's right there. And that's where you have to get to, is having that place to release. Or sometimes it's a punching bag. You just go, while you're punching the bag at the gym or kicking the bag, that's where you let it out at. With the punching bag, can't tell anybody. And so you go and you do those things. Sometimes it's the bench press or the leg press, but sometimes it's something physical that you talk to while you're doing it. And that's all part of it. But the other part is finding some activity. Like Brother Cory said, I believe that you need at least 5 minutes a day where you do some kind of physical activity, because you're still a man and you still have the testosterone, you still have the adrenaline, and you need to just exert yourself for at least 5 minutes a day. Even disabled, you can do some exercises. Just, if you just twirl your arms around real fast for 5 minutes, or just light jumping jacks, whatever you do, but exert yourself so you're reminded that you're in the world, that you're still alive, you still have an opportunity, and that you're still part of the nature. And maybe a nature walk, but at least 5 minutes. And that's why it's achievable. Most of the things we try to put out aren't achievable. Everybody has some New Year's resolutions, and we make these things that most of us aren't going to achieve, which just adds another failure to your life that you're going to regret. But do something achievable. We can do something for 5 minutes. I can walk to the mailbox and come back. So set up achievable goals so that you don't begin to feel as a man that I'm not meeting the mark anymore. As you get older, there's some things you're not going to be able to do. That's the reality of it. It'd be nice to be like Tom Brady, still be playing it at 40 years old, but most of us, you're not going to be able to do it that long. But be real about it and say, okay, what else can I do? Well, I can read to kids at school. That's powerful to have a man come into an elementary school and read to kids. That's a success. I go and help at the senior center. I can do other things that are more powerful than society wants to give men credit for. Men don't get credit for going to school and reading to the kids in school, but the life you change is the credit, because the universe matters. And so we have to get past society's measure of what manhood is. And that's why I believe the spirituality comes in. When we think about Jesus, and even if you don't believe in Jesus, you're still part of the universe, and Jesus believes in you. So if the universe is true, which I believe is true, and God's word is true, then what you do, you reap what you sow. So you may not realize it, but if you're doing good, the good's coming back to you, and eventually there'll be more good in your life than there'll be out of your life. And so you kind of have to keep busy, but not doing, as I say, in the thick of thin things. And that comes from Stephen Covey, because I'm a 7 Habits course participant, because the company sent me to all the courses. And so what I call it the thick of thin things is sometimes you got to say no when there's a deeper yes. Like, I know I'm not doing that today, but you know what? Let's look at next Tuesday, and look to that, because you don't want to just say no and have everybody think you don't want to do anything, because most time we say no, it's because of a reason. I don't have the money today. I don't have the time today. I don't feel well today. I'm not in a good headspace today, but I know this is going to pass. So I can say, okay, you know what? Alan and I are going to go out on Friday. I can't go today, Alan, but you know what? Friday afternoon, let me go grab a lunch at Panera's or something. But I said no today, but we said yes to a Friday. And then you feel like your life matters and continues on. So I kind of look at those things that when we talk about spirituality and how I got to where I am, and looking back and now being able to get involved in the community. There are so many things you can volunteer for that as a man, you are making an impact. And I think changing the world takes more, quote unquote, physical ability than it did for anything else that I've ever done in my life. Brother Alan?
Are you done?
Yes, sir.
Hey, let me tell you something. I'm sitting here listening to this, and that between the two of you, it's a great presentation on managing stress, taking charge of your life, how to be resilient. It's all in there. And you've outlined qualities and characteristics. I do a lot of resiliency work in presentations, and taking charge of your life, controlling your emotional reaction patterns, learn to put your feelings out in a useful way, be open and honest. It's all in there. And I love the points about avoid those negative coping skills, because there's healthy ways to cope. And you guys came up with a great list. And I'm looking forward to seeing Cory in the mountains, because I'm up there in the AT. I don't know if I'll see him on the Shenandoah River fishing, but I love to fish, and I love to do all the stuff everybody's talking, and it opens your mind up and it relaxes you. Great information. It took a lot to tell those personal stories. They're meaningful, they're helpful, and it makes a difference in the lives of others. So thank you for putting all that, as to what I say, putting it on the table so we can see it, hear it, experience it, and learn from it. So thank you for all that. And so let me, I'm gonna pop up here back to the share of this screen and back to PowerPoint, always staying on focus, but some local resources. We want to talk about some resources, and then we want to talk about answering that. We want to answer some of those questions. I think some of those questions may have been answered in these incredible presentations. But, you know, I see on this local resources here, the Lock and Talk program is one of the prevention programs that I oversee through RRCS prevention. And, you know, the simple concept with Lock and Talk is that, you know, it's about firearm safety and medication safety. So, you know, the nuts and bolts things we do a presentation about the Lock and Talk program, the importance of this in suicide prevention and safety. And environmentally, we pass out trigger locks to community members and through police departments. I just gave a bundle to the Culpeper Town PD the other day. They're going to distribute through their neighborhood watch and put it online if they have them. So I work with community partners a lot to implement anything we do in prevention. And I want to say this, I'm the manager. Ellen Chamberlain is here today. She is a prevention specialist who works with me. Chelsea Moore works with me. My supervisor is Taisha Chavez, and I'm up under the Children's Services and Prevention Services within RRCS. So we have a team, and I love to say that now. We have a team. For many years, I was doing this work basically on my own, and then I'd have a part-time help. So, you know, RRCS has made a commitment to build prevention, and I'm extremely happy about that. And we are involved in a lot of programs. I'm not going to spend all the time talking about that right now, but Lock and Talk is one. And so we have prescription lock boxes for medications with locks on them. We give those out if anybody's interested. We have trigger locks, cable locks, and we do presentations. And we also promote events that are sponsored through the Lock and Talk program nationally and in Virginia, to where there's trainings and events for people to attend. So we send those out to everyone through our coalition groups. Now, I mean, I got to throw this in too. You know, prevention doesn't operate by itself. You know, we were big time involved with in Reverend Holland and Cory. It's similar to having friends in prevention work. You have community partners who are your buddies. One team, one fight. You pull together to do things together. So you have RRCS Mental Health Association. We have Healthy Culpeper in Culpeper there. They have 3 subgroups. There's PCR, Partnerships for Community Resources, Rappahannock Roundtable, Madison Strong. There's groups out here that we all try to work together. And we have, you know, Team Jordan. We have several coalitions that are made up of those who have lost loved ones to suicide or overdoses, and they have lived experience. So you have Team Jordan, which is Suicide Prevention Coalition. We have Rusty Bowers Suicide Prevention Coalition, and Living the Dream Foundation, which involves substance abuse and suicide. They're all people who have had tragedies in their lives, and they're responding by saying, we don't want this to happen to someone else. So we connect with them, support them, and work together with them to outreach to community members to address these key issues of suicide. And right now, the opioid epidemic. I've lived through that crack crisis, but substance abuse as well, and trauma. You know, that, you know, with the big time with that mental health first aid, there's a lot of talk and work around trauma and traumatic events. And that's a contributor with the gatekeeper training I do. That's on my list of risk factors for suicide. You know, adverse childhood experiences, traumatic events, and trauma. You know, there's a big risk factor for having thoughts of suicide and becoming depressed and things. So anyway, I'm going to leave that alone for a minute. And I know, Cory, you did talk about the S.E.E. Recovery Center. Before I jump over there, I do want anybody to know if you're interested in any trainings for, your organization, church, anything. We do gatekeeper training, community presentations related to substance abuse prevention, mental health work. So we have a whole I have a resiliency training series that I did through RRCS. I did it with Virginia Cooperative Extension. A lot of it's online under Balancing Life series with Virginia Cooperative Extension. And I'm working here with Mental Health Association doing these series. So these are recordings, they can be viewed and we can make those available to people. And we're willing to come out and do the presentations ourselves. So we're here and we'll support. And I'm not, I got to say this, I don't want to overtake anything, but I got to say this, again, I'm talking about prevention stuff. We have at RRCS a whole array of services for people who are in distress. I mean, substance abuse counseling, mental health counseling, all kinds of programs. I mean, I've got a brochure, we have clinical services, we have the aging unit, we have community support services programs. I encourage you to go online, rrcsb.org, and you can see all the services that our agency offers. And remember that regional call center number, you need help. You identify somebody or you have a family member or you yourself. Look, a lot of times people don't just do it on their own. They say, oh, I'm going to call myself. It takes someone to help. So that's why I love gatekeepers. But call that regional call center number and tell someone what's going on, and they'll link to help. They'll listen to you, talk to you, and say, okay, we can connect you here. We can connect you there. If there's an emergency, they'll make the 911 call on that as well. So call that number and use it. It'll link you to our services big time. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Cory for a while. Any more about that S.E.E. Recovery Center, and then any more you need to say about that, Cory? Or
Sure. I'd also like to pipe in on Lock and Talk. So I spent some time. I did a research fellowship with the Defense Suicide Prevention Office, and I'm really, really passionate about suicide prevention. As a veteran, I've lost too many friends after the fact, right? Where we survive some of these events and then they don't survive being at home. The veteran population is far more likely to use a firearm. 70% of suicides that are completed by a veteran involve a firearm. And to me, the Lock and Talk program, it's all about time and space. So some of the things, like some common misconceptions, are that suicide is mental health related. Normally, it like the highest prevalence of suicides are a result of relationship problems and financial problems. Right, that is the first thing that I think everybody needs to understand. And the Lock and Talk program is really more about getting some time and space between that moment when you see the only way out as being to take your own life and the means to do it. Right, we are in a rural area. Everyone loves their firearms. I have no issues with that, but it's the understanding that when you see somebody struggling, just let them know, like, hey, separate it. If you don't want to put the guns away, you don't want to lock things up, a gun safe sometimes, storing the ammo in a different building. Right? Most houses around here, we have sheds, we have separate garages. But if you think the best way it was ever put to me, because I had a very close friend of mine that was struggling, and he's got a safe in his office that has a small arsenal in it. And I was like, whoa. And this is somebody that doesn't always reach out to talk. And when he reached out to talk, I was like, okay, I've got some concerns. I'm a state and a half away. What can I do? And I started talking to him. I was like, hey, can you change can you have somebody change the combination on the safe? Can you store your ammunition elsewhere? And we came up with this plan, and he was like, why are you having me do this? What is this about? And I just laid it out. I was like, listen, these are the risk factors. This is what it means. What I'm worried about is that you'll wake up in the middle of the night and you'll be in that bad headspace, And if you have access right there, that's not good. I was like, if I can give you 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes between that thought and the access to those means, it could save your life. And he turns around and he says to me, so it's kind of like when you're going to go to the gym. You wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm going to go to the gym. If you don't go to the gym within 10, 15, 20 minutes, you're making up every excuse not to go to the gym. Right? I'm not going to have enough time to do this. Oh, that Krispy Kreme, or if you're in Culpeper, that Knackles donut seems a lot more appealing than going to lift weights. So it's that kind of concept. You want to give some time and space. Sorry, I had to throw that in, Alan.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's right. That's what it's about. And I appreciate you saying that. That when we do talks, we talk about that, and that's the key, big time.
Okay, so with the S.E.E. Recovery Center, the concept of this is open access to pathways to anybody in the community. So you consider it as if you have somebody or you're like, I don't know where to start. I looked at the website and the CSB has 80 different programs and I don't know which one I'm supposed to be looking at. That's where you can go into the S.E.E., talk to a peer. The peer can help you sort out like where you need to go, what you need to do. Not only that, they will walk with you through that. You don't have to go through it alone. Whether it's going through rapid access to get into services with the CSB, whether it's connecting with another community provider. Like on our end, it doesn't matter. Like I have two philosophies when it comes to recovery. One of them is if you're breathing, there's hope. So we have to do everything we can to make sure people stay alive. That's it, right? Everything we can to keep them breathing, because at some point, somehow, they're going to have that moment and there is always hope for recovery, no matter what. And then the other side of it is I don't care what pathway you use, as long as you find something that works for you. And that is the drop back of the philosophy of the S.E.E. Recovery Center. We have an array of mental health support groups. Some of them are peer-led and mutual aid, like your Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. We have MARA, which is Medicated Assisted Recovery Anonymous, and it's a 12-step program for people who are using medications to help recovery. We have RAP, which is Wellness Recovery Action Planning. We have SMART Recovery. All of these are peer-led things. And then we have general peer support groups where they have different topics that they'll discuss. We have family support groups, because never forget that the families are also impacted by mental health, substance use, and challenges. It's an entire unit that's impacted. So the families can come in and get support. Throughout the day, we have evidence-based models and evidence-based practices and groups that are done. All of those things, we have a clinical supervisor there, Patrice Jackson. She's fantastic. She ensures that those evidence-based practices are being done and are available. And the key to this is that you can kind of come in and get a taste of treatment. You can kind of come in and go, I want to try this, I want to try this, I want to try this, and figure out what works for you. We've had some people come in that are like, oh no, I'm never going to talk to a therapist. I don't need that. It's because there's some stigma involved. And then once they come in and they're like, oh, I want to learn more, or I have this going on, and then the staff will be like, okay, so these are some of the things that you may want to take to therapy. We have a lot of people that have very strong convictions in faith. We do everything we can to connect them with the faith groups, because we have Celebrate Recovery. Now, we don't offer that one at the S.E.E. We've had it in the past. It didn't quite get traction, but we know where all the Celebrate Recovery groups are. We know where all the Restore groups are, all the faith-based groups. If somebody is like, I really want to focus on my spirituality as a means of recovery, we'll support them in doing that, because it's what's going to work for them. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop of like, these are the different things I can try, what's going to work. And then you'll always have support. And additionally, they'll help people connect, and they'll support people in connecting to other treatment or other avenues of care or other resources. That's all I think I've got with the S.E.E.
Beautiful. And I tell you, I love the I saw a study recently because I do that gatekeeper training, and you're looking at those factors. Everybody thinks it's mental health issues that are the cause of suicide, but there's these factors that go on. There's a study CDC did on what factors contributed, what were going on in the lives. They were looking at this after deaths, and this is with 27 states. And the biggest one, 42% had a relationship problem. Another one, physical health problem. And, that was a 21%. The financial piece was on there as well. And then others. And I know with young kids, even so, we're talking kids, you're talking family problems affect them, they affect adults too. And that's relationship stuff, but bullying is out there as well with younger populations and everything. So anyway, we have on here the Mental Health Association. So I didn't know if Bridget or Renee wanted to jump in and say something or fill in there.
We are great. Maybe we can move on to the questions.
Oh, okay, well, we're up for that too. So let me pop this slide thing down here. I'm with you. And so anyway, here's some links. I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. And I do want to mention, the grief groups, they have them at Spiritual Care Support Ministries. I actually I also facilitate a Survivors for Life support group with that team Jordan, the coalition group supports. I facilitate it, but it meets the third Monday of each month in Culpeper at 7 p.m. It's online right now. We're looking to go back to regular meetings. But if you know someone who's impacted by the loss of a loved one to suicide or by suicide, that is a group specifically for individuals such as that. And I wanted to lay that out as well. And I know S.E.E. has a support group for those who have lost someone to overdose. That's starting off. I've had other people want to do that. We have other groups. So anyway, I want to leave that there. NAMI's on. So those are some local resources. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on and stop share so we can talk. We took this list of questions, and as a panel, we'll all look to answer some of these. And I think some of them maybe have been answered, but I got them in order here. What are some realistic, fun, hip community involvement events, self-care activities, suggestions for young adult men to comfortably ease them into healing / bonding with other like-minded men? I heard some of that in the earlier presentations, but anybody else want to jump in and say something about that or some activities there? I heard the fishing, the hiking, anything that someone's doing I know the Wii or the video gaming and stuff like that. Of course, we are doing a gaming prevention and gambling prevention thing, so some of that can become addictive. But anyway, it can also be. I love the meditation. Mentioning that, I love the spiritual side as well. But and I love what you said, Reverend Holland, about if you're not into this, look at the meditation. So you do research on that. Meditation is big. And so what else? Anything we need to add to that as a group here?
So I think a lot of it has to do with starting with looking for different outdoor activity groups or even indoor activity groups. So there are a lot of hiking groups in the area. And this is like, I'm a member of the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. And you have an opportunity to volunteer. You have an opportunity to get out with people that are more concerned about like preserving nature, preserving beauty, and some level of physical activity. And to speak to Reverend Holland's point, there's a lot of areas that you can volunteer. I was able to go out and briefly interact with one of the volunteer groups at the Blackburn Trail Center, and there were 2 Vietnam veterans that were amputees. And they were able to work in an area where they were able to do something. And the best part about some of these is it's away from alcohol. I know the S.E.E, we have been doing different activities because we're trying to provide that safe sober environment. We'll do hiking groups. We have the Shenanigans at Sea, which is like a game day. We have a weekend where they do board games. But a lot of it is going to start with like searching out based on your interests. There's groups now for everything. And it's really just finding one of those groups where they have, so I'm not, my goal in fishing is the same as yours, Reverend Holland, where I don't really care about catching anything. I just want to either be out on the water or sitting on a riverside. Just, it's an excuse to be out there, be quiet, and kind of like, as I always tell people, get my namaste on. And there's a lot of groups that do the kayaking or do like slow river rafting or tubing, where it's not a lot of physical activity and you're just getting out on the river and you're floating down, and it's just it's something a little bit different. We have indoor rock climbing in Culpeper, and he does, I wish I could remember the name of it. Oh, I'll have to double check, but
There's that
they'll-
state climb and silk thing there in Culpeper too. Yeah.
Yes, so that's the one where he does sliding scale, and he is more about community involvement and supporting people to find a healthy outlet.
Yeah.
So I really think that those are some of the areas that you can start. A lot of the churches, they have so many different groups, and they have so many different avenues to bond that if you're looking to get in touch with the spiritual side, that's also a great outlet. And I know Reverend Holland can probably speak a lot better to that than I can, but there's also, I mean, I love hot yoga, right? I like being in 95, 100-degree room, doing the stretches and trying to hold the poses and not slip in my own sweat. And it's just like, it's those kind of things where you get into this like-minded thing, and a lot of men don't realize how many men go to these, right? Every time I've gone to one, there are always other men in there, and it's a way to connect where it's like, this is something that may not be perceived as a masculine activity, but oh man, it's like, because I can't do the just normal meditation. I have to have something to keep me out of my own head. So doing something like that, it's another way to connect, and it's something different, and then you can get connected with people. And yeah, they may do that, but maybe they also like sitting out in the river. So
Right. Hey, I also think that Path Center, Resource Center had volunteer opportunities. You know, if you're talking about doing, and I heard Reverend Holland mention that, do some volunteer work, and that giving is so rewarding. That gift of giving, really, who gets the gift? You know, the person doing the giving a lot of times. So there are volunteer opportunities that can be researched and looked into, and support groups like we're talking about. And I know these community events that the coalitions always sponsor ongoing community events. There's 5Ks, there's resource tables, people come together over issues. So, you know, if you're community minded, you want to meet people who are wanting to make a difference, you know, these events are offered. I know Living the Dream had a 5K. I know Rusty Bowers is going to have an event, and that kind of thing. So be alert to those events. Festivals in Orange has an Orange Festival coming up, that kind of thing.
Alan, also for those who like the outdoors but maybe are not hikers, the Remington Community Garden is always looking for volunteers. As is the Fauquier Educational Farm. You don't have to have any experience. They will teach you. And then if it is something that you love, the Virginia Cooperative Extension has a Master Gardener program that is a great educational thing. And then it gets you involved in spreading, you know, information about gardening and yards and lawns and all that with our community. Reverend Holland, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, you know, a lot of male men, we have this competitive edge that never goes away. And so you have some things that you can do competitive, like chess club, former chess club if you don't have one, checkerboard club. And that's something you can do anywhere. You can sit at a restaurant, set a table up and compete outside or parklet. The other thing is the Socratic circles, where you get philosophical. You all can read a book and then come together to debate it, and set up and give you your it gets some of that aggression. I don't want to say that word, but it gets some of that energy out because you have the heated debates, but you're doing it in a civil and respectful way. So you still get that competitive edge because you can succeed and win a debate, or you can win a chess match or a checker game. So there's some things that you can do that are low cost, which is also for a lot of people that an impact. We have to be realistic in this society. There are some people, they don't do something because they're afraid of the costs involved. But if you have low cost, I mean, you can invest in a checkerboard or a chessboard fairly inexpensively these days. And getting a book, you can check the book out of the library, so the group can check the book out. Then you can get together online and discuss it, or you can meet at your local coffee shop and whatever. And it's simple things to do, but yet you still get some of the energy out where you're able to be where you're able to feel like a winner, because you can win the debate, you can win it. So I think that achieves some of the feeling that a lot of men have as they get older, and some things decline, or you're injured and things decline, but you can still go out and have that masculinity for a minute, but not in a toxic way.
Appreciate that. Hey, I want to throw in one point here, and then I want to open it up for some comments from the group as well with these questions, because we have people out here who have some ideas too, I'm sure. But when I do this resiliency presentation, I always talk about taking charge of your life, and I heard some of the things you were talking about, both of you all, and it piques me on it. But I encourage people to make a list of what you're responsible for. Make a list of it. What am I responsible to do? And then also make a list of what's important to you. And, hey, I want to go do this. I have heard Cory say that. I want to make sure I'm not doing all these work things that I forget to go on a hike, or I do take care of myself. So you make a list of what's important to you. And if you spend and manage your actions, I like action management, time management. We all have the same amount of time. It's what you do with that time that's important. So if you spend your time focusing on those lists and doing what you're responsible for, what's important to you, you can balance your life, get things done, and you can add to that list. So that's just kind of I like lists. So I like to make a list of what I need to do, want to do, this year, next week, whatever. So something, just a tip. So I'm going to say this. Let me add, I'm going to take a chance here. We've got people here. We don't need to do all the talking. With that question, does anybody, I see like Margaret shaking her head like this or something, that's why I like seeing people's faces. I don't want to read too much into it, but does somebody have some other input on that question that you know of? Not putting anybody under any pressure. I don't do that, but Margaret.
Yes. Thank you all for having me today. I'm Margaret Fisher, and I am a community engagement manager with the Unite Virginia Network. So working to connect people to all different services and resources in the communities across Virginia. So it's great to be part of this conversation. And no, I love the idea of making a list and writing down not only what you are responsible for in that day and what you need to get done, but also putting yourself first and writing those down and making sure that you check those boxes and they don't get neglected. And then the ways to have fun without, the pressure of society for eating and drinking and going out and spending money just to be part, but the more simpler ways that you can still, have a great time and be surrounded by people that are like-minded and feel the, same pleasures from doing the same tasks. So finding relationships that way. So thank you all for sharing that.
That's why I wanted you to talk. I've heard you at Healthy Culpeper. I know what you do, and I think you're a vital resource. So you may want to put your information in that chat box for people to contact you. I believe in the work you're doing there, Margaret. Thanks for being here today.
Yes, great. Thank you, Alan.
You know it. Anybody else? Because that we're community members. Maybe there's community partners that have some services and resources. I knew Margaret would. So anyway, if not, keep that open. So what can men do if they feel stressed and overwhelmed? I feel pretty comfortable that we talked about that. I don't want to shut it down, but I heard a lot of input on that. Who wants to add some more to that? I heard some of those healthy coping skills. You know, if you're feeling, to me, if you're feeling down, that's on that emotional reaction pattern chart. And so if you're feeling down, you know, you have to look at going, let me put my feelings out there in a open and honest way is important in my book. So what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Recognize that, put it out. And then on the chart, so to speak, you start to think, how can I cope with this in a healthy way? No negative coping skills. So what can I do? And there was a list of things like the healthy activities, what's important to me, things I like to do, things that make me feel better. And then again, if it becomes a disorder level, you know, we need to have people around that can interact. That's why I like resiliency, having good friends, healthy friends that connect, understand you and care. You can tell people what you feel, what you're going through, what an avenue to get help. And then those people can also go, well, you know, maybe we need to look at some professional help, given how bad this is or how desperate you are. But definitely friends, healthy friends, programs, activities. I think we heard a lot of that. I'm not so Reverend or Cory, anything else you want to throw in with that jumps out, or anybody in the group? You guys laid out some good stuff. You know, find something you enjoy, and even Margaret threw in that, you know, make your list. What do I want to do? Let me take care of myself. And, you know, seek professional help if needed, support groups. And, you know, let's keep the gatekeeper mindset out here. So how can men help other men in getting help for themselves? I don't want to ramble on, but Cory, you got something you want to say on that? I saw you take off your speaker there.
I was going to jump in with the feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
Sure.
As I was alluded to earlier, I'm a little busy. I think, and this is just works for me, is when I have a lot going on, I make lists. And if it is a very lofty goal, I make a longer list with like all the little different steps, because as I'm checking things off, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. And it helps me like kind of reframe it, where it's not like this huge thing where I'm wildly overwhelmed. I can just make this list and kind of task order and get things done. And then I will also ask for help, where it's like, if there is something, the military side, it was like delegating. So it's like, is this something I can delegate, or is this something that I have to do? And that's usually where I start. Once I make my list, it's like, do I have to do this, or can I delegate it? And that helps. And then you can use that in a lot of different areas, because if there's something going on at home and there's a lot of things and projects going on at home, you can do the same thing. Is this something that I have to do? Can my significant other help? Can my kids help? Like whoever else is around? Can roommates help? And it kind of helps ease some of the what would cause people to become overwhelmed. As for getting men, how can men help other men in getting help? I think it's with being open and honest about your own experiences. So I guess the best way that I can explain it, and I don't want to try and be too wordy, is how it hit with me is, this is my ball of negativity. This is what I'm dealing with, and this is the worst thing out there, and no one else can compare. And the reason that a lot of men will have that perception is because not all men are open with what they're going through. So, and as long as you're not open and honest with each other about like what you've gone through and how you can, like what you did, like I'll tell people like, hey, and I kind of joke about it, and I call therapists witch doctors. It's just my own personal thing. It's a temperature check to make sure, because I've use a lot of humor. So I need to make sure that somebody I'm working with can take a joke. But it's like being open and honest with like, hey, when I was really struggling with this, or when I am faced with this, I go to a therapist. If I don't want to go to a therapist, I go to a confidant. Because as Reverend Holland says, that sometimes you just need that person that you can trust and vent. And then it's supporting people and discovering that avenue. And then also, you know, you can set some, you don't have to like get into the details. You can get into minor stuff and you know, explain like, hey, this is where I was really struggling and this is what I did to help. Sometimes kind of laying out a framework that worked for you will spark somebody to go, huh, I hadn't thought about that. Or okay, that may not work, but maybe I can do this. So like that was how I fell into hot yoga, because the yoga and the like home mindfulness meditation did not work for me. I had to find something that I could get physically engaged enough that I could disconnect a little bit from the thoughts in my head. And sometimes just talking about that will help other people out. The other thing is that sometimes leaving the resources lying around, right? Sometimes that works. I've seen some things where we've left some literature, some brochures, some reading material, just kind of like out and about when we knew somebody was struggling and they ran across it, kind of thumbed through it, and you would be surprised at how many people, because again, it's that I'm not asking for help, you're showing me how to help myself. And sometimes that will resonate more, but I will always default initially with like, be open and honest with some different struggles that you've had. I know that like in the Marine Corps, that is one of the things that they are starting to do now in the upper levels of leadership. They're starting to come out and say, hey, I have struggled throughout my career. I have had this, and these are the things that I did early to prevent the catastrophe from happening. Because if you hold it down too long, like I knew I was having an issue in 2008. I didn't seek help until 2014. And it was only because they were kicking me out. So like, you don't ever want it to get to that point. So it's like, these are the things that I did early on when I was struggling that helped. And that to me is like, that's what resonated with me the most. When I finally started to get help, when I had other guys and other peers and other people talking to me and saying, hey, this is where I really struggled and this is what I did, that helped. For one, I knew I wasn't alone, right? I knew I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the only one dealing with this. And that gave me that sense of community. And it also gave me the sense of hope, because I'm looking at guys like Reverend Holland that's done it, and look at what he's come, and look at how much he's grown, and I can do that too. So it's that sort of camaraderie and bonding, and that will, and letting people know it's that, like, that's how you let people know it's okay. Don't do as I say, do as I'm doing. You lead by example. So.
I love it. Hey, and I'll tell you, I'm looking at, I love the encouragement towards relationships. There was a thing in the chat there that maybe Bridget can read, but and what that was, look, I love the piece about showing empathy, being understood, letting people know you're not alone. There's other people experiencing the same things, but understanding and showing concern. We talked about the value of being understood, you know, because when people aren't, what a trigger that is for anger, resentment, depression. So to be understood and have someone listen, care, understand, connect, and then link to help is a beauty, and show that here's other people have been through something similar. You never like to say it's exactly like you, but here's some people who've been through some things. So Reverend Holland, did you want to add anything else to that, or you?
What I've found is it's good to have, like I said, a variety of friends. You want some who have been through something deeply emotional like you. So when you have to go deeper, they understand what deeper is. Then you want some who you can just talk to. So you have to be, in a way, have a selective group and maybe of 4 or 5 people that you know specifically. Now you can have a lot of associates, acquaintances, but you need to, in my mind, you need to have a small group that you can go to that's not competitive. As men, you know, we sometimes want to one up each other. You know, Cory says, well, I saw this, well, I saw that, and want ours to be bigger. So you want somebody who can get past that because they've gone emotionally deeper and said, okay, this is what happened as the upper military ranks come and talking with the guys now. And then also you want to be able to have somebody that you can just talk to, that they're just listening because they've not been through anything similar, and they'll give you an objective feedback of what they're thinking, but you're also helping them. So that help that you know you're giving them so they don't step in that same trap can kind of give you a release there. So you really have to make an agreement with yourself that I'm going to find a nucleus of people that I can talk to. And a lot of times it's difficult to go to a peer because that's competitive. You're trying to be a business person, I'm trying to be a business person. Sometimes we bump heads. So a lot of people come to a pastor for pastoral care because usually most pastors, they're either retired or they're not doing any of those kind of jobs. So I can come to you and tell you what it's like to be, you know, doing this and know that there's no competition. You're not looking at me as trying to say, oh, he's weaker than me or stronger than me. You're just looking at me as a person talking. So you have to kind of surround yourself with a small nucleus of people that you can go to at different times for different things, because one person may not be for everything.
I can't think of anything more valuable than having someone you can go to and open up and express what you're feeling, knowing they'll listen and understand. It'll help diminish the impact. I love that. I love it. And to have that is a gift if you can find it, you know, somebody who truly cares and shows concern. So beautiful. So I'm going to go to the next question. If we're looking at good time here. Here's a beauty. What can we do to address the epidemic of the quote unquote angry young male? How can we give them an outlet to express themselves and better support them? I'm thinking some of the stuff we're talking about ties in, some of this is connected, but anyone want to jump in on a, you know, when I'm seeing that angry stuff, man, I go back to that emotional reaction pattern. I always like have that someone who can connect and go, hey, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What's going on here? And let's figure out some avenues to cope. But any other input on that? I mean, that anger, if you're talking about resilience, that's an emotional reaction pattern that's going to keep you from moving forward and being resilient. So it's, but you got to understand what's going on there and develop some coping strategies to manage the anger. What do you think on that? Anybody? Sound good or what?
I feel like I'm jumping in way too often and talking.
No. This is what we're here for. Put it in there, man. You talked about this earlier. So it's, you know, I've seen it and help with people with it, but I'm listening to you, man. Everybody wants to hear it.
I mean, there's a couple of things like that. So part of it is societal expectation, right? So that's part of it. The other side of it is still as a society now, in some pockets it's getting better, and it is getting better with most, I think a small majority of the youth in the country now, but it's, for so long guys weren't allowed to be sad. So a lot of times anger comes out in the place of depressive like feelings. So that's like the first. So I think allowing that outlet for young men to be able to talk about what they're going through. I mean, there is more pressure now on our youth than there has ever been, right? The single income household is non-existent, right? And if you look on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, everything now is about how you can do more side hustles and how even, you know, and it's like, so you think about that pressure. right? We have kids. When we were younger, it was a little bit easier to go on and move out and you could be able to afford it. Now, I mean, especially if you look at our area, and yeah, we border up to Northern Virginia, so there's that impact, but that's bleeding down and houses are getting more expensive and the system is broken and the rent is too damn high. It's just like, that's the reality of it. So yeah, people are going to be angry because it's, and especially with young men, because there's still that, like, you have to be able to take care of not only yourself, but your family when that comes out. And you can't talk about being overwhelmed and you can't talk about being upset and worried and like, oh my God, how am I going to be able to do this? You know, college isn't the answer for everybody. Trade schools are getting more and more expensive. And then it's even like, do they have that opportunity? And then another side of this that always has to be looked at, and I'm not going to be able to answer this. I'm just trying to kind of broaden the understanding of like this epidemic of the angry young man, is that we have to look at like the racial and ethnic disparities in the country and how people, and Reverend Holland nailed it. It came back in the 70s and people were looked at differently. That is still a thing, right? I have never interacted, well, I can't say never because I haven't had that full conversation, but the vast majority of the time when I am talking to a Black man or a person of color, and we talk about interactions with law enforcement, there are things that they worry about and they have that talk at some point in their life that I didn't have to have as a white guy. And I didn't grow up in a very good area. And I've got some feelings about that too. But once I got out of that area, my experience was different. And that can oftentimes cause anger. Right? I would be really pissed off if I had to live my life differently and I had to worry about basic things just so I wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time, or if I turned the wrong way and somebody's going to interpret my look as being angry. Case in point, then I'm gonna be quiet about it. James Cook was drafted by the Buffalo Bills. I am a big Bills fan. I am a big football fan. James Cook came out of the championship team of Georgia. I'm excited. His running back skills are going to fit in great with the Bills. All right. But one of the things that came out is they're showing a picture of this young man in like young Black male college graduate, educated, in a meeting having a discussion, and he has what I would just call like a serious face. It looked like he was engaged in that conversation. One of the things that was coming out on social media is that he was angry and he didn't want to be in Buffalo because he was seriously engaged. And like, these are some of the perceptions. And I mean, he took it in stride and, you know, was just like, no, I'm really excited to be here. I'm happy, but I'm focused. Right? What do I have to do to be successful with this team? And it's that kind of interpretation that can come out as well. So, all right, I'm done.
You're good. You laid out the issues big time, and it's always, what can we do about it? So we need to keep training. We need to identify the stuff, make changes in the community and the way things go. But that's going to be a big process. And I did see there's a Washington Supreme Court decision the other day when you're talking about police, that they have to consider race in their contacts and stops. And so you can read that Supreme Court decision, Google it up. I teach a course called Good Cop, Bad Cop for UVA. And that's, we talked about it last night, but look that up. So we need to have some systemic change all along here, no doubt about it. And again, I'm going to go back to identifying the anger, and I love your statement there. I mean, a lot of times I work with people. I used to do parole work and probation work for years, and I had a counseling degree. I always asked them, what are you feeling, what are you experiencing? Way back then, a lot of them had adverse childhood experiences. They suffered trauma, and I've had people come in angry. And I remember a guy one time, I said, hey, you're angry. And he goes, what do you mean I'm angry? And I said, well, that's what I'm talking about. I got a grin on my face. The guy said, what are you grinning about? I said, that's what, because we're going to get down to the root of why you're angry. What's going on with you, man? I care. I want to help. And out of that, I can't find work, got relationship problems, got this, that, and the other thing. And it's making me mad as hell, so and it came out. He didn't even know he was doing it. But, when I talked about it, he goes, okay, I hear what you're saying. When that ended, the guy got up, and because I was going to help him and was working with him, the guy got up and cried and gave me a hug and went around to everybody in my office and said, I'm sorry. I've been angry. But he really didn't even know how bad it was that it was coming out. We need to find ways to help identify and talk to people. Go back to this, having that group or somebody you can say, hey, mentors, whatever it is, let's open up, let's talk. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? We'll support you. We can talk. Let's find an avenue, things we can do, coping strategies for this, what's going on. And Cory, you're so right, man. It can be depressing for anybody looking at price of car, house, rent, trying to be quote unquote independent, or maybe saying, hey, I want to help support a family or do something when you can hardly support yourself. It's unreal. So that's the issues, but we've got to do some things. Anyway, so I hope that was all right to say all that. I didn't want to, you got me going. I still think I want to go back to look at those sessions that are on the YouTube and look at Virginia Cooperative Extension Balancing Life series of trainings. There's a bundle of trainings out there that are recorded that talk about a lot of this stuff. It's out there. So let's see what steps can be taken to deal with long-standing grief and your mental well-being at the same time. I'm not trying to shut anything down, but I think we talked about support groups out there. It's important to, I go back to identifying something when it's a mental health disorder, it's affecting somebody so deeply, there's help. And a lot of people, like we're saying, they don't want to step up. They don't know about the groups. They don't want to go in a group and open up, but support groups through the groups we mentioned can be vital. But sometimes they're not well attended. And so, I'm not trying to take over, but I'm just recapping some of the things I've heard. If someone says, hey, I got a little more, Alan, jump in here. Don't be afraid. I'm not taking over. So what's the biggest misconception when it comes to males' mental health? They're men, they don't have problems, or they're that kind of thing. That always comes to my mind. You always look, when I look at who goes to treatment, females go to treatment way more than males do. So we need to try to change that a little bit, but I'm a man, I'm strong, or I'm not supposed to have a mental health problem. I'm going to deny it. That comes to my mind. Reverend Holland, I see you. What do you think?
You're a man, toughen up. That's what society says, but
yeah. Be tough and don't, that in the military there, Cory, at one time, it's, or in policing, you don't want to say you got a mental health problem because they're going to go, oh my gosh, that's going to compromise my ability to do my job. So there's things like that. You don't want that label because somebody will maybe move me out of my position or hold it against me. So it's when it can be treated, it can be helped. And there are, there's treatments, talk therapies, and there's medications. And I'm not, people always say to me, we don't like to promote meds. Well, I'm not promoting meds, but I am going to tell you, I've seen cases where people got on the right medication along with talk therapy, and it made all the difference in the world. So it's whatever works. You know what I mean? Whatever works. So there's options.
I think some of the other side of the misconception is that it's almost, we're conditioned not to show emotion. So when you are conditioned that way, a lot of people won't realize that there is something wrong until you're at that just before a crisis stage. So, that there's that misconception of, oh, they look fine. And that's not always the case. And then the other side of the therapy, and this is actually something that I'm engaging with a few of the professional therapy, like counseling organizations, is more diversity in therapists, because and not just racial and ethnic diversity, but gender diversity, because there's not a lot of male therapists out there.
Yeah.
I think at this point I've probably had 11 or 12. 2 of them have been men. So, and those were the ones, honestly, that I felt more comfortable with a little bit faster, just because there were some sides of it where it's really hard to relate something that you haven't experienced. So, and I think that for a lot of guys, they want to be able to either engage with another guy, because there are just some things that it's there. And there are some things that can be said. And I think there's value in that too. But I think the biggest misconception is like, yeah, man up, toughen up. You got this. Here's a straw, suck it up. And we get so used to that it's like, oh, and you just keep going. So, and when you keep going, people may not see it. So there's the misconception of what it's going to look like.
Yeah. You know what? I love this, Cory, because I don't mind. I'm going to tell a personal story. And I don't usually like to do that, but I think sometimes it's worthwhile. I remember one time I had some stuff going on, and I remember telling my doctor about it. And I tell you, they later told me, hey, I missed some of the things there. And I'm not putting doctors down. It was just like a thing like, hey, I know Alan, he's pretty strong, this, that, but I was having some difficulties, and he underestimated and later told me, I'm sorry about that. And I'm not beating him up, but I also remember going to counseling, and it was the best thing that happened to me. I connected with my counselor. I told what I was feeling, the dynamics, whatever was going on in my life, and they gave me concrete ways to cope with that, deal with it, and it made sense, and I did it, and it changed my life. It changed, and it goes back to that relationship stuff, man. You got dysfunctional relationships in your life, identify them, deal with them, get rid of them, find those healthy people who understand, listen, and care. And so that, everybody's got a dynamic, and counseling can be key. So it can be key. And I love what you're saying there, Cory. You got to find the right one that you can open up to, and you get the right information, and whatever the services you need, give it a shot. All right. Let's see here. How can we encourage men to talk about their mental health more readily? I mean, that's some of these are going in the same vein. I don't want to minimize the question, but I don't know. I mean,
Mine is talk about it.
Yeah. I'm always promoting being open and honest.
Mm-hmm.
I love the resiliency stuff. Again, you got a problem, put it on the table, be open and honest. And you got to have gatekeepers who show that empathy, concern, want to listen. They don't want to immediately go, oh, do you want to feel that way? Blah, blah, blah. They'll listen and understand, and then support you, and then link you to available resources. So, it's just making it something that should be done. Hearing more males talk about them doing it. I love putting my feelings on the table. I love someone listening to me, and I like getting help. I'll put that right out there right now. If I have a problem, I like to feel comfortable saying I need some help. I'm suffering a little bit here. It's a way to do it. So we need a PSA, a campaign out here where people can see that more and live it and be around people to do that. So let me, I'm at the end of the list of questions there. I'm looking at time. I think I'm going to open up right to this point to anybody in the group that wants to ask something. How about that? Or make a comment. Let's do that. Anybody want to throw something on the table? Anybody want to ask anything that wasn't on that list? Or we want to hear from you all. We're not here doing this to you. We want to do it with you. Renee, Bridget, you got any comments you want to make?
No, I think it's going great. I just wanted to remind everyone of the Mental Health Association Provider Directory. It's a great tool for looking for a counselor. I'll put the link up in the chat.
I like that. And you know, a lot of our areas have those resource guides. I know Fauquier, Culpeper has one. I mean, we're here, you know, to me, I got in this thing knowing it was probably going to reach out to the 5-county area and who knows where else. But so, you know, other areas have their resource guides, they have services. And, you know, depending on where you're from, you know, if it's a Fauquier and that's it, fine. But there's areas have that. So be alert to the resources in other areas as well.
I was also curious about the Socratic discussion group that Reverend Holland mentioned and how we can find more information on that
The Socratic,
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, we haven't gotten back together in a couple of years, which is sad. But once we get it reestablished, I'll give information. Anybody wants to join, we can send out information to it.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks.
I like it. That's the way I teach when I do courses. I do that Socratic. You tell me it's like this, I'm gonna tell you it's like something else. And we'll just broaden our perspective, and you know, nothing's right or wrong, but we'll figure out what's going on. You got to look at everything to analyze stuff. I like that Socratic mindset, deep analysis. Love it. So hey, I'm just gonna say this. Anybody needs some services or needs some help or wants to say something, we're hanging on here, but I think we can, unless I'm off the wall here, I think we can call it a session today. And if you need anything, please reach out. There's people who care. There's agencies who care. I know Mental Health Association, RRCS, S.E.E., churches, you name it. There's people out here who care, and look at those resource guides. But let's also work to get trained. Look at some of those trainings, or look to get into other trainings like the gatekeeper training, where we can be trained to identify people in distress. We can learn more about the issues that are out here: substance abuse, mental health, and then suicide. And then be part of the solution, be able to learn how to talk to somebody comfortably and say, hey, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Okay. Are you having thoughts of suicide, or what's going on? Let's help. Let's be part of the solution and help people and approach people and connect. So that's my last concluding statement for me.
Alan,
I'm sorry.
I also wanted to mention for veterans, there's the Heroes Bridge group. And I think in the last slide on this presentation, there's information there, but I also put in the chat. There's also support groups through NAMI Piedmont, and also Spiritual Care Support Ministries has a men's grief support, I think once a week. So
gotcha.
Okay. Reverend Holland or Cory, do either of you all have one last piece of advice or inspiration before we sign off?
It's okay to not be okay, but I think I would like to see more guys just get back to sitting down and talking about, and being willing to talk about anything and everything. You can initiate it off of sports or commonality, but just having, and then like Brother Alan said, a PSA needs to be put out that says, you know what? Hey guys, get together and talk. You know, get back to talking again, because now everybody, like says, social media is drawing away. COVID is the excuse, but the reality is we could sit around, you know, how you can sit around and talk again in the park or whatever, or just guys being okay with having a guy's time out, and doesn't have to be at a club or a bar. It can now be at a coffee table or a library or a church or whatever, and just truly talk about what it is to be a man in society in 2022 and forward.
I'm loving the three of us together. I tell you that, with the whole group, but I'll take you guys any day. Yeah. Let's start our group. Cory, what about you?
I got to go back to hope, that there's always hope, right? And if you're not feeling it, find somebody to just talk to, because I'll hold on to hope for somebody until they can see it again, because I know I had some people do that for me. where I just didn't think that there was a chance, and they just didn't give up. So I think the bigger thing is just, like, hold on. There's hope. It'll get better. There are ways, so that's the bigger thing. And then, yeah, getting back together and talking again is huge. And this coming from an introvert who's just perfectly content being in the woods by himself. But yeah, we've got to have those connections.
I do want to say something, and I'm proud of doing it. My son is actually on this Zoom panel. Yeah, that's Vince. That's my son. That's not me logged on there twice. I know that people think that he's Vince, I'm Vinny, so you separate the two easily. But he's a better man than I am, and I attribute that to his mother and to God. And I'm just encouraged, and I know his friends will pick up on this and they'll watch this later on after the recording. So
Beautiful. That's what we want. Beautiful. Vince, glad to hear. All right. So, what do you think, Renee? You want to pull the plug on us?
Of course, I wouldn't pull the plug on you, but I'm going to do my little speech again. We are ending this meeting 7 minutes early. And so according to your calendar, that 7 minutes is already taken up. So what I encourage you to do for the next 7 minutes is do some self-care, whether that's going out and standing in the sunshine, doing a little yoga, doing a little boxing, whatever it is for that 7 minutes to put you in a good frame of mind, to restore that hope, to fill your pitcher. I encourage you to do so.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you, Bridget, for all you do. And thank you, Cory and Reverend Holland, for being here. It's been a joy being with you. It's been outstanding. Love you guys.
Thank you, Alan. It's great.
Thank you.
A great webinar.
Everyone for coming.
God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you.